Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Also, thank you very much to our Patreon supporters. Steve and I both live paycheck to paycheck, so we definitely appreciate how meaningful it can be to offer even $1 here and there. That being said, Patreon also offers a free tier, so even if you can't offer financial support, you can still sign up for the free tier, or you can also do things like liking, sharing, subscribing, all the good social media things, or even writing a review if you're feeling squirrely. Now, before we get into the show, this is the trigger warning. This is a horror podcast. It's a horror/psychology podcast, but it is also half horror. So we may delve into sensitive subjects such as, child abuse, F-bombs, SA. It's not guaranteed, but things like that could come up because, as I said, it is a horror podcast. So we have to put that out there. You never know. It's a fun, thrilling, fun ride that is mostly positive. Mostly.
Usually.
That being said, Steve, what do we got coming up?
Today we're talking to Charlene Elsby, a philosophy doctor and author, best known for her books Hexis, Psychros, The Devil Thinks I'm Pretty, and Violent Faculties. Welcome. How are you?
Hi. I'm so happy to be here. Let's get into some distasteful topics.
Yes. You come well recommended. I believe it was Paula D. Ashe and David Simmons both said we should talk to you. So we were like, all right, got to get her on.
Fucking love that.
Also, a philosophy doctor. I like that. Yes. I saw that in the description before the show today. I was like, well, this is going to be a fun one. Let's talk about deep, meaningful stuff that actually doesn't mean anything and you don't have an option of finding out the answer, but that's the fun.
Maybe. Before we get into the meat of the interview, you want to let us know what you're currently working on?
Yes. So I'm currently trying to sell copies of Red Flags, which is a short story collection that came out with House of Lead in October. It is a themed short story collection about people who are currently in the throes of death. It is from the point of view of their consciousness, and some out-of-print chapbooks tacked onto the end. So this, if you have been following my career for a while, these are little nice autobiographical tidbits. I am expecting to announce any day a book coming out with Weird Punk called The Organization is Here to Support You. That is a office bureaucratic horror novella about, how capitalism destroys our souls, and also there are monsters. And then I've got a new book for Apocalypse Party, which, the current title is Triptych of the Damned, and it's about a woman who suspects her spouse is cheating on her, but it turns out he's just killing people.
Oh, nice.
Well, at least there's that.
Right? I'm picturing the argument now. I'm not cheating on you. I'm murdering people. It's not as bad,
but there's
right?
a sexual aspect to it. Like, come on.
You were cheating me in your heart.
Yeah.
Spiritual.
It's like, why not me? Why them? Why not me?
Well,
I want to be murdered too.
Hey, there are some people.
There are some people.
So if you're into that, look out for this book.
Yeah. So I do like that title. The organization is here to support you. Like instantly upon hearing that, I'm like, I don't believe that statement.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm so fucking glad because I changed that title last minute, and I'm like, I feel like this is, self-evidently creepy, even though what it says is, a very positive sentiment. But there's that implicature that you picked up on right away.
Yeah,
it works. Yes.
I always get Fahrenheit 51 and 451 and 1984. I always get them mixed up, which one is which.
Me too.
But, for some reason, my brain just kind of gels them together. But it's reminding me of that.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Fahrenheit was the one where they burnt books.
I know that because that's what the temperature is. That's how I remember that part. But in terms of like plot and stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I don't know how much you know about what we do, but the general gist of it is that we will talk about your childhood, teenage years, and then adult years, and then at the end we'll talk about any common themes that keep cropping up. Basically, talking about your love of horror and certain other experiences. That said, it's not meant to be a therapy session, so if there's anything that you don't want to answer, just say pass, and we'll move on.
Awesome.
But starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Man, I wasn't scared of much as a child. I liked airplanes. I liked sneaking onto roller coasters I wasn't tall enough for. My dad loves guns. We used to go shoot in the field. I had a mini bike that I used to drive around the house. That was awesome. Yeah, I didn't have too many fears as a small child.
You had an adventurous childhood.
It was just fun and toys.
Okay. So did you not then get introduced to horror stuff until a later age, or?
I remember as a child, I started reading. I mean, I'm trying to save some stuff here because I just listened to the David Simmons podcast, and I feel like I know that there are some questions coming up for when exactly I determined that the world was not a safe place. But as far as getting into horror goes, I loved the R.L. Stine Fear Street series.
Okay.
And I would, the library would buy them as they came out, and I would go down and I would read them. And yeah, I don't remember them being scary. It was fun. That was fun.
All right. Guessing what you might be alluding to, normally some of our guests do refer to a dividing line where prior to the line horror was scary to them, but then it became fun after the line. If in your case, it almost sounds like it might be the opposite. Before we get to that, is there anybody in your family who were fans of horror?
Not specifically. For a while, I had a stepbrother who was into Stephen King, and he always wanted the rest of us to read these Stephen King books, and they were all right.
Okay. I
didn't find them super exciting. I think it was I really liked the Tommyknockers and Needful Things, and then he handed me The Stand, and I'm like, no.
This is over 1,000. No, not this one.
I was like, dude, I'm 8, DNF.
Right.
Yeah, that's a bit much. What was the other one? Tommyknockers and what?
Needful Things.
Needful Things. Both of those, I would think, having not read of either myself, but reputation preceding them, 8 seems a little young.
I like that it's not for graphic content; it's just the amount of content. Like this is too much.
For the Stand, yeah,
it was too much. I was bored.
Yeah,
I don't remember anything particularly interesting happening in the first 100 pages.
I'm curious about the thought of your parents being okay with your brother giving you Stephen King at 8.
Not the craziest.
They were fine. They were totally cool. I mean, they were divorced by then. The only thing they never wanted me to see was Silence of the Lambs. I remember it was around the same time my mom had people over, and they were watching Silence of the Lambs in the other room, and I remember sitting in the hall so upset that I wasn't allowed to join. And from the hall, I could barely hear and see it, right? So, But no, I lived a very uncensored childhood.
Well, it sounds like you, at least up to a certain point, maybe were rather well suited for it in the fact that you weren't afraid. Maybe whatever well-adjusted framework you had in place, I guess maybe they understood that it wasn't going to affect you the same way it might affect someone else. Did you participate in?
I was just going to say on that, I'm curious if you weren't necessarily scared by horror, or it sounds like anything at a young age. Did you at least have an interest in the macabre aspect of it, like the darkness of it? Was it interesting to you or intriguing in that way and not scary?
Yeah. And I read something recently about how, it's children who love the gore and the creepy stuff and tend not to be afraid of it. Whereas, I think as people age, they do get more afraid of things, as you have more experience of the world.
Right? Maybe because you understand the ramifications of it as you get older, then you're scared of it. Whereas when you're a kid, you're just like, your head getting ripped off. That's cool.
Yeah.
Red stuff.
That's cool. That's super cool. Yeah.
That won't hurt at all.
It didn't hurt them, so
Well, yeah,
right.
That of.
It's funny when it happens to other people.
Yeah, right.
But then you get older and you gain empathy, and you become attached to living in a way where, as a child, I don't remember feeling that attached to being alive. I remember thinking, someone wants to murder me, okay. That's fine. I'm like,
that's their prerogative. Not going to ruin their day, you know?
but then as you gain these attachments to life and the things in it, then the things that threaten that gain a more ominous tone.
Yes.
There's an interesting aspect to it. It's not necessarily empathy, but your attachment to things and things and experiences and the fear of those ending.
Yeah.
Right? If I've only been alive for 5 years, I mean, like, I'm not that attached to it yet. Right?
Yeah. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
Yes.
Nice.
Favorite costume?
I was an M&M one year, and that was amazing. My mom made me it's just a giant round M&M, and I wore it like a sandwich board. And at the same time, she made me this like super sack so I could hold more candy than all of the rest of the kids. It was like a child-sized sack. And it matched my costume. And, Canadian winters, I could also put on my coat underneath, and it was amazing.
There you go. Functional. And I like the fact that it's not supports, but promotes the candy. You are candy. So it's like, I am candy. I have a giant sack for candy. Give me the candy. Right?
To call back to our Heather Powell episode, did you get any poutine?
That's right. I remember talking about like people just pouring it into your hands.
Nah. By the time I started Halloween, everybody was already upset about all the razor blades and the candy.
So, yes.
Yeah, it had to be prepackaged. Otherwise, I would have gotten the handfuls of poutine, as previous generations had gotten.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you have a least favorite costume when you were a kid?
I remember my shoddiest costume was when I was about 15, and I was long past Halloween, but I had two buddies, and they wanted to go door to door and get some candy, so I'm like, fine. But I was wearing a black hoodie, so I just pulled it up around my face and shut the, what do you call that, the string?
Yep.
And then said I was a bank robber.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen worse. Have you seen the movie Booksmart?
No. Is it good?
It is very good. Yeah, it's directed by Olivia Wilde. It's a like coming of age story about two girls that are about to graduate out of college. But to spare you the entire plot, which I usually do too often, my friends will attest to this. There's just one scene in particular where they try to rob someone, and they somehow take their hair and put it into ponytails, and then kind of flop it over their face and use their hair as a mask. It doesn't work very well. So yeah, the hoodie thing is good compared to that. How do you see? Well, they like tied it just in between the eyes, so it was a ponytail that kind of draped over their face and went in between the eyes and then flared out.
It works because it's so stupid that it's distracting.
Yeah, right. You're like, are you robbing me? What are we doing here?
Let's go back to Tommy Knockers and Needful Things for a minute. Did you actually enjoy those, or did you just read them to satisfy your stepbrother and then not?
Yeah, I like reading.
Okay.
Yeah, and like anything that's absorbing, right? Like that can distract and entertain.
Mm-hmm. Was there any particular scenes or anything like that you recall about those that you liked?
I don't. I don't know. It was so long ago. I can barely remember last week. Yeah.
Again, you never know until you ask. Any reoccurring dreams or nightmares when you're a kid?
I remembered this just because I listened to the David Simmons podcast, and I knew this question was coming. Like, did I have a recurring dream? And I remember this one awful, creepy dream I had that has stayed with me forever. And it was near when my stepmother moved in with us, me and my dad and my sister. And I remember it was, a new person coming in, and that was a little scary. So I had this dream that I woke up and I was drawn out into the backyard, and it was dark, and I went behind the garage, and for some reason I started digging a little hole, and out of this hole I pulled a Tupperware container that had the living head of Demi Moore.
Huh.
This was around the time Indecent Proposal came out. And I remember her like telling me, it's like, your stepmother did this. And I'm like, oh God, fuck. Oh shit.
Like the head of
This
Demi
is what I'm
Moore
dealing
told
with
you
now.
because it was
Yeah.
still alive?
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So maybe some trepidation.
Yeah, a little bit.
Almost,
Yeah.
almost sounds a little comedic at that point. You know, it's like something out of an 80s movie where you pick up the head and the eyes are closed and all of a sudden they shoot open. Your stepmother did this! Like something out of a Sam Raimi film.
There's also the Tupperware container. Like, in my child brain, it was keeping her head fresh, right?
Yeah, that too. Your child brain is so considerate.
Yes. Brought to you by Tupperware. I was going to reference the well-known trope of the evil stepmother. I mean, there's reason to have to be afraid of that, even if you don't have any. What's the word I'm looking for?
But it turned out she was the good one. She was the good one. Yeah.
Just like Elphaba.
What?
Just like Elphaba.
Who the hell is Elphaba?
Clearly, you haven't seen Wicked, sir.
No, I have not, actually.
That's
Me either.
the Wicked Witch's real name is Elphaba.
Okay.
Okay.
It's weird.
Thank you for the random trivia. Okay. Again, I'm not sure if this is going to be for this section or the next section, but was there ever a time in your childhood when you were terrified of something in real life?
Yes. And I think this is the turning point.
Okay.
This was like around the same time where I became fascinated with the terrible things that people do to each other, which is, one of my guiding themes. So, yeah, when my parents split up, I got a stepmother. I also got a stepfather. And he gave my father this creep vibe to the point where, like, my dad decided he was going to call his buddy who worked as a police dispatcher and, like, get him checked out. And it turned out that he had convictions for child molestation.
Oh.
Yeah. And like my mother decided that she was going to, in the spirit of Christian forgiveness, decide that was a thing of the past and, we could go live with him anyway and that would be just fine. And that was a little terrifying after a while. But I remember the day when she, broke the news to us. It's like, okay, we're going to go hang out with this guy. He does things to little girls like you. And she told me, well, if he does ever try anything, just grab the nearest weapon and try to kill him. And she promised me, I won't be mad at you. Wow. And I was like, damn, that's a little upsetting, but okay, Mom, I believe in myself. It didn't really sink in though until I saw it happen. Like, I still thought I was fine. It's like, okay, let's go. It's, we're going to go and it'll be fine. If he tries anything, I'll just stab him. Until the day when when he got into it with my sister and she felt unsafe and she grabbed the kitchen knife and tried to go at him with it. And he's like this 6'1" man. He just, picked her up off the floor, slammed her into the wall, and the knife is gone. And I think that's when it hit me, like, oh shit, I'm actually fucked. Yeah. This is not a safe space. So that's when I started thinking, about the things that people do to each other and how they carry on as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by carry on? Sorry, you were saying something, Chris?
No, you go ahead.
I mean, yeah, like how they carry on. It's like, okay, like here is this defining aspect of my childhood, and people are like, oh my God, sounds terrible. It's terrifying. It's like a pedophile living in the house. And I'm like, yeah, but he's just he's in the kitchen. He's making us chicken for dinner. It's very normal.
Yeah.
Like having a half feral dog. Like, yeah, it's mostly fine. It'll occasionally bite you, but it's over there.
Yeah.
But it's over there. Yeah, so I think that shaped kind of like a new worldview for me, because it's like the world seems normal, but if you look out the window, any one of these fuckers could turn on you at any second.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that will hear this that will recognize and relate, even though not necessarily, child molester, but, alcoholics and all kinds of other abusers can be very dangerous people, especially to kids, because, there's, like you just said, he was, 6 foot something, and there's the height and the weight difference and all that kind of stuff too. It's Very relatable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there is always the well, not always, but it's not uncommon for a step parent to be, an oppressive force like that. Usually not to so much a degree. And at what age was this?
I was 6.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, that kind of skews your whole aspect of horror going forward throughout the rest of your life, because it's like, this horrific thing, that horrific thing. But in the back of your mind, you got to think the whole time, like, yeah, but people are really terrible.
Yeah, but this is normal. And I have this all the time where people are like, oh my God, this thing you wrote is horrific. And we're like, no, that's horrible. That's normal. That's just, a thing that people do to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Paula D. Ashe had the story, We Are Here to Hurt Each Other, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking love that book.
Interesting that those things happen at 6, and then you didn't mention the books, the Stephen King stuff until 8.
Well, I knew which, yeah. We got the stepbrother at the same time as the stepfather. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Now I'm wondering about the stepbrother.
He turned out fine.
Good.
Quote unquote fine, or fine or quote unquote fine.
Yeah.
No, it's an inside family joke that I am the normal one.
Again, normal.
What is normal, right?
Well, flipping that last question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or at bliss?
Palate cleanser.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, staying at my dad's house, I, would read my books in my room and listen to my Nirvana records over and over and over. I was obsessed.
What records?
Nirvana.
Nirvana?
Oh, okay.
Nirvana records. Nice. You had them on vinyl?
No, I lied. I had them on cassette tape.
Okay. Well,
I meant record in the general sense.
Album.
The album.
Okay.
Yeah.
Album.
Yeah.
Gotcha. It's okay. Cassette tape is still that niche retro cool.
Yes.
It still works.
Yep.
Yes.
Do you remember the first person you hurt?
Oh, I remember the first time I made a kid cry.
Okay.
That works.
I was, I was in at school, and people were making fun of this kid, and I was getting in on it. I also wanted to be cool. I was not a cool kid. And I remember we all had name tags on our desks and I took his and I ripped it up into little pieces. And he immediately started crying. And he's like, oh God, now I can't spell my name. Oh. And I felt so bad for that kid. It's like, oh my God, I didn't realize that you were actually relying on this thing for. Yes. And I felt so terrible. And I made him a new one.
Nice.
So,
like,
well, that answers the next question, which is, do you remember the first person you helped? Would it be the same person? Or do you remember something earlier than that?
I was always attracted to the kids who didn't have anybody to talk to.
Okay.
So I'd go and hang out with them. And, but yeah, sometimes, I think that's how I realized that when there's someone who nobody talks to, it's like, sometimes there's a reason for that.
Mm.
And it's because you don't want to talk to them either. So ultimately I was not very helpful. I did not become very helpful until as an adult, I gained enough power to be a helpful person.
I can see where the understanding for that came from. Yeah. Particularly,
it comes up often. It's almost a cliche now. Kids are awful, or kids can be so cruel, but it's funny just how much of a raw nerve children really are, or everyone is at that age, because you can be really cruel, but at the same time, they have a lot of potential for empathy. Like the moment you saw that kid, his day was ruined because now he can't spell his name, you empathized and took care of him. Or I don't know, I guess there's the occasional sociopath out there that just be like, that sucks.
Or take advantage.
Kids can be cruel, and they can also be very kind.
Yeah, and I do get that. Like, sometimes when people hurt each other and they do feel bad about it, sometimes your first reaction is to double down, just to try to assuage your own guilt and convince yourself you don't feel bad about it.
Mm.
It's like, no, I did that, and I'm going to own it. And
I was right about it.
Yeah,
that's right. You were wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. Quick try.
Yeah. Well, moving into teenage years, do you remember any scary stories or books or movies during your teenage years that stuck with you?
During my teenage years, I didn't do much like specific horror genre stuff.
Okay.
I started getting into like hardcore literature, and these are probably the books that influenced me most as a writer. So I was reading like Dostoevsky.
Okay.
Crime and Punishment is a murder book. Marquis de Sade, a lot of violence there. So yeah, I got super into, again, like violence and the things that people do to each other and the reasons they have for that and the ideology that backs it up. Because like when you read the Marquis de Sade, like it's got all the ultra violence, but it's also got the reasoning behind it. Like what's going to justify this?
I would consider that horror. It's real life.
There's like the online discussions about this are bonkers. Does the Marquis de Sade count? Does Bataille count? Does Dennis Cooper count? Or are we horror adjacent transgressive or some other niche category that I had no idea all these categories existed before I started writing?
My answer would probably be it depends on what end you're on. Are you on the receiving end or the...
Yeah.
And whether or not it's consenting, obviously. Because there are those people.
Yeah. Wasn't there a German guy who put out an ad to be eaten?
Oh yeah,
I thought it was Japanese. Or there might be both.
Might be both.
There was totally a German guy. I had a buddy who worked on that for his philosophy project in grad school. Yeah, whether you can consent to being eaten, to being killed and eaten by another person. What do you think?
I think so. If you're of a certain age, if you're of an age where you have the mental faculties to grasp that concept, yes, you can consent to be eaten.
I would think that it would need to go down similar paths to the, like euthanasia. You have to have certain, talk to a psychologist, you have to pass these different stages for them to say, nope, this person is, sane and, has the ability to make this choice.
So of legal age and of sound faculty.
Right.
Those two requirements. But yeah, sure.
Like there's a moral aspect and then there's a legal aspect, right? Like I think what you're talking about, the legal aspect, like how are we going to let the guy who ate him get away with it?
Well, not even that, but in terms of verifying that the person making this choice is of soundly, mind and body to make that choice, because what happens if somebody who's not really capable of making that choice wants to make that choice? I mean, would you let your kid touch a hot stove? It's that kind of thing. So it's less about what it says. It's less about what that says about that person and more about what does that say about me kind of thing. I guess under the right conditions, maybe, but let's do a little homework first. Okay. So Dostoevsky, anything particular stand out about his work?
There's a lot of interior monologue that hugely influenced me and how I write now.
Okay.
Were you a fan of the original David Lynch Dune?
The fuck does that have to do with this?
There's a lot of interior monologue in that movie. There's a lot of interior whispering to themselves.
Yeah. Good point.
I'm sorry. I definitely dated people who made me watch it several times.
Take that as a no.
It's not of my own free will. And at the end, I may not have looked back on it as a worthwhile venture.
And it was because of all the internal monologue, wasn't it?
New Dune, way better. Way better Dune. Yeah.
So interior monologue, violence and the ideology behind it, justification behind it. Anything else jump out to you from those years?
The unfiltered stream of consciousness. Like just the amount of distasteful thoughts that someone is willing to admit to in print.
Okay. I'm guessing that's referring to Mark de Sade.
And Dostoevsky. Like, there's so much spite. If you're reading like Notes from the Underground, like the motivating factor of that book is spite. And it's so relatable.
Spite can be
I guess for a correlate, like you could think if you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, right? Like Larry David is a terrible person, but openly admits to this. And yeah.
Right? It's almost cathartic watching him be a terrible person. Like, I wish I could do that. But you know what? Watching it vicariously works.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe under certain situations. I don't know. Maybe that's just because I'm a nicer person than he is. I don't know.
You are.
I think the challenge of not just his show, but others, and this is not just a TV show, but also books too, is that there are a lot of people who enjoy that challenge of how can I what kind of a situation can I imagine in which doing the bad thing is justified? You know, like how can I show that sometimes you do need to do this kind of thing and that it's okay?
Yeah, and I'm just not worried about whether it's okay.
Well,
like,
yeah.
You might be a sociopath.
Let's talk about existentialism for a moment.
Sure. Yes.
Sure.
Whereas
as humans, we have the radical freedom, whether it's justified or not, to just do the bad thing. And by doing the bad thing, we are implying that it was the best thing to do and that we somehow justified it, because by nature, humanity is always going to do the thing that they think is best in the moment. But what if we just choose the worst thing because I can, because I value my freedom to do so over any other higher moral good? And I think that's where Dostoevsky starts at the beginning of Crime and Punishment. Like, you know, I can kill this woman just because I can. And there are all sorts of after the fact justifications, like, oh yeah, well, she was a leech on society and yada, yada, yada. But
kind of makes me think of the whole, Ian Malcolm quote, could, should, but then the immediate afterthought is, it's the definition of should. It's very, it's objective.
Yeah. Well, no, subjective.
Subjective, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there are definitely people walking this planet who view things that way. Not making any judgment statements on that.
Some of them are walking this planet with a duffel bag of heads trailing behind them, but that's another story.
Right? Just burn it all down. Doesn't it seem nice just to burn it all down and not always be beholden to this concept of the right and the good? It can get exhausting.
Question for Chris: why duffel bag and not Tupperware containers?
Because the duffel bag is easier to carry. You can carry it with one hand.
I thought you were making a reference to something.
Nope. Maybe
the duffel bag full of head is canon, isn't it?
Yeah.
Canon?
Mm-hmm. There's always a duffel bag full of heads.
There's always a duffel bag full of heads.
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah, there's actually a great comedy called 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag.
That's a great comedy.
It is. Yeah, it's one of those everything that could go wrong did go wrong kind of stories.
For at least 8 people.
Yep. And the people trying to dispose of and or obtain the 8 heads in a duffel bag. Yeah, it's a comedy.
Take your word for that.
It's like a comedy in the same vein as Very Bad Things. It's a dark comedy.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I don't think you needed to make that.
What else did I watch?
It's not a Disney film.
It's a dark comedy. No, you don't say. All right, so Halloween. Had the black hoodie. I think you had said that you had kind of passed participating in Halloween by teens. Was it?
Yeah, that was over. Correctly? Well, that was when it switched from trick or treating to parties, right?
Yeah.
Depends on you.
Not uncommon.
Okay. Any time in real life that terrified you as a teen?
I don't know. As a teen, I was pretty, inured to the threatening things of life.
It's hard to top the terrifying experience from childhood,
Yeah.
All right. So answered that one. Any really scary dreams or reoccurring nightmares as a teen?
I had one terrible dream, and I curse it to this day because it started for me my trypophobia. Do you know what trypophobia is?
Yes. Fear of holes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's a fear of holes, small holes, like small holes that you don't know what's going to come out of. I had this dream when I was like 13, 14, where I was running around the town that I lived in at the time, and little holes kept popping up out of my skin. And in these holes were eggs that something was going to come out of. And they just continued to proliferate on my arm. And I kept running around town. I knew there was something that I had to get done, but I didn't know what it was. And I knew I had to get it done before these eggs hatched. And ever since then, every time I see something with like clusters of small holes, it's just disgusting and nauseating. Like, I think to call it a fear is like a little misleading. It's not a fear. It's like a, ugh.
It's a skin crawling.
Ugh. Like, gross.
You know, have you seen that meme? If I had a nickel, I'd have, two nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's strange that this has happened twice. This is going to be the second time I get to say this in basically 2 months. But how did you feel when you found out that you had eggs in you?
Oh, we choose not to think about that. One of the things we choose not to think about as we go. That's disgusting.
Well, the human body is disgusting. I mean, that's just a given.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah, that's funny. We interviewed Jessica McHugh not even a few weeks ago, I think, and she related a similar, fear of, I don't remember how it came up, but there was something about, being disgusted by eggs. And then I got to say that comment. So there may have been something related here where, like you said, you had something that you had to finish before these eggs hatched. Maybe there was some anxiety, shall we say, about...
I never thought about that. I always think of it as like some kind of evolutionary thing where it's like a deep-seated fear of people who have skin diseases. Like,
that's possible too. You would know yourself better than me.
Maybe it's that I want to stay away from other people who have skin sores, like especially if they're infected with some kind of parasite. That's what I always thought it was.
Well, there is that joke about, babies being parasites.
It's a joke?
Indeed.
That was a fact.
Uh-huh.
I want to take this opportunity to anti-recommend two things.
You're making it pretty hard for me to distance myself from the source of my fear.
Whatever you do, don't watch the new Junji Ito series, and maybe Smile too. If you got a skin thing, stay away from that too.
Oh, yeah, that was a really fun movie.
It was, wasn't it?
Okay.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. The crazy fan with the skin.
Yeah.
Well, flipping those questions around, did you have any time in your teens when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or bliss?
Oh, yeah, that's when I started doing hallucinogens, and those were the best.
Aren't they?
Yeah. Like, I remember walking around town. I made some good friends, like some nerdy friends who, like, had no severe
Did
issues.
you, or were you hallucinating
that? No, those are called mirages. There's a difference.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and I remember, like, we would plan a night and just eat some mushrooms and smoke cigarettes all night and get gummies and just walk around town in this, like, shiny state of, the ultra color goodness. And yeah, those were great nights.
Did you guys go to the convenience store? That's kind of a staple. You have to go to the convenience store whenever you're tripping.
We preferred the more lonely places. I mean, it was a tiny, small town, too. Nothing much was open. But out in the trees with the vibrant colors of nature.
Well, that does sound nicer. Me and my friends, for some reason, always like found it upon ourselves halfway through the trip to be like, let's go to the gas station. We're going to go get some drinks and stuff. Let's go interact with people. It's going to be fucking weird and fun. I'm like, that doesn't sound fun.
People.
But okay, let's go do that. Yeah, I wish we had gone to the woods instead.
Oh, the woods are great, especially in fall with the leaves changing color. And they just wiggle in the wind.
Nice.
Vibrations.
I'm sorry if you've never done mushrooms now and are just, looking at trees thinking, yeah, they're nothing special. They are. They are absolutely special.
They 100% are, especially when you look up to them and just think about the whole fractal aspect of them. Like, this is a thing that offshoots from the earth because it needs certain nutrients, and then it offshoots a thing off that thing, and that thing offshoots a thing off that thing. Like, trees are fucking wild.
Oh, man.
Any particular scary stories or books or movies that stand out to you in your adult years?
In my adult years, that is when I switched to hardcore philosophy all the time. And so the horrors that I encountered as a philosopher are the horrors of existence. So we're talking about Sartre. Chorin is devastating to read. Love him. And all the creepy metaphysical things that you can find in the existentialists and the phenomenologists and the ancients.
When you say the ancients,
Ancient Greeks, Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras.
I'm familiar with some of their works, but obviously not to the degree you are. I didn't even have a bachelor's, much less a doctorate. So other than maybe just talking about existence, was there any particular work that stood out to you?
Yeah. For example, Chorin's got this concept of a negative eternity that I would always teach. And, it's because usually we're talking about eternity as a positive thing. Like, this is a positive realm where God lives, where you go when you die, yada, yada, yada. And there is no time. We're moving beyond materiality and temporality. And this is, the absolute good that is the cause of all nature and yada, yada. But Chorin has this negative eternity where you're alive still, but time stops.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's like the worst state for a living human soul to exist in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when all of my students with hardcore depression was like, man, philosophy's the best. They really get me because it's so relatable. Yeah, to be in this state of futility where action seems impossible. You're still aware, but nothing proceeds. And yeah, as a counterpoint to this positive eternity, it's like a living hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a concept I see come up in some sci-fi stories sometimes about like an AI or an android who had to stay awake while humans went into stasis, and they were there for hundreds of years, but that ad infinitum, like that is true horror, just being in stasis and being unable to do anything for eternity.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, like the true horrors are real. These are real human capacities that you can, states that you can find yourself in.
This reminds me a lot of joked on this podcast about having a Joseph Campbell jar. This another opportunity to bring him up. One of the things that I really liked that I learned from him is the difference between infinity and eternity. He described as infinity is, never-ending amount of time. Eternity has nothing to do with time. It's where time stops. It's it's like an infinite moment. And I think the confusion of the two kind of comes from the idea that, I don't know if I agree with this, but maybe some people will, that when we die, that an eternal moment stretches into the infinite.
Yeah, like infinity or infinite has a direction, it seems, whereas eternal is timeless.
Just a moment.
Yeah,
it's a point in time.
Persistent moment.
It's a point in time that, as she was saying, you kind of get stuck in or lasts forever. It's a combination of infinity and eternity, but
like when I picture infinity, it's like an infinite series, like how the natural numbers carry on forever. Like if you just keep counting, they'll just go on and on and on. But that's still a series, right? But when I picture eternity, that's always like a viewpoint from outside of time that views. I mean, the best we can do to describe it is like when someone describes like everything in the universe happening all at once, which used to always be like the God point of view. Except now that we are contemporary progressive people, it's more usually aliens. It's like there's always some alien that exists outside of time and can see the whole of human history at once as if it's concurrent. And that's how I think of eternity. It's like a meta time. It's outside time.
But like you say, it can either be a good thing or a bad thing, or Because Chris was kind of alluding to even a neutral thing, which can in itself be its own bad thing.
Right, like a thing that has no concept of time. Like what is time to eternity? There is no time. It's just it just is.
Yeah.
Right? It's like looking at time as if they are chapters in a book. They are technically one after the other, but you can flip around if you want, and they all coexist in this one unified item that's sitting there on the desk.
I'm thinking.
Careful with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering. Maybe wondering is a better word instead of thinking. Wondering how this ties into the prior conversation, or is it just like this is a new? I don't know if I want to use the word fear, but new fascination added on top of the ones that existed previously. Like, is there connecting thread, or is it just like, oh, this is something new that I like?
You mean the abstract concepts compared to like actual things in the world that are sources of fear?
Right.
I think we retreat into the abstract in order to escape the actual perceptual world where things are happening. And I think that's how we get into philosophy in the first place, is because we are trying to make these abstract, objective, general claims that are true at all times for everyone. And by doing that, we are like getting out of the reality where things are happening to people, where the bad things are happening to people. It's like we're going to stop thinking about that, and we're going to start thinking about the general nature of time, which is an escape. Like, we just did it just now. We escaped into the abstract realm of the consideration of the concept of eternity. And in doing so, for a moment, we did not have to think about the horrific things that people are doing to each other outside.
Yeah.
Interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah. All right. So I think I've got something there. We'll press on, I think. Any recurring nightmares or dreams as an adult?
I have recently, and I think this is because I keep switching up which meds I take to get to sleep.
I knew that was coming. It's always the sleep meds.
With a certain mix of clonazepam and melatonin, you can fuck the devil.
There's an ad right there. That is the advertisement.
Pretty consistently. Whereas when I was taking Zopiclone, there are no dreams with that, or at least none that you remember. But yeah, like lots of fire and brimstone. One night I was driving a really cool car in just like a neighborhood that was burning down, and I was driving a Jeep that was on fire after fucking the devil. Just trying to escape. But yeah, hellfire, brimstone.
Does it always start with sex with the devil? Just out of curiosity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Followed by he busted the door. He's like, you again. All right, let's go.
Brings about the apocalypse. Yeah.
I can't help but wonder if it's like desire, revenge, mixture of both. We talked about spite earlier. Like,
love from column A, love from column B, you know?
What's the emotional fascination?
No, I worry that there are like evil forces sneaking their way into my psyche. And yeah, like I recognize there's the chemical aspect to it, but you know, there's so many ways that could manifest. Why this one? Why this one?
So self-defense?
There's two sides to it for sure.
Is it because I wrote a book about the devil and he's like pissed at me?
Maybe.
Self-defense?
I wonder. Or maybe I have an intimate ally.
Again, subjective. You know, it's all how you view it.
Yeah, the word.
I am not a dream interpreter.
Ally is an interesting choice of phrase there. Like, in what regard? What's he helping you with?
Yeah.
Sold your soul.
Yeah, I'll hope to get that back.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck. Have you been terrified of something in real life as an adult?
Oof. You know, I'm not terrified of much as an adult. things occur to me, and then like I think I can take them.
Okay.
I think, yeah,
Like,
when something occurs to
mentally,
me that
constitution, physically, like I could take it.
I think I could take them. I mean, there's always something I could do to avoid the scary thing, right?
Yeah.
And then she tries to fuck the devil.
That's what it is. Now we got to the root of it. Yeah, it's not a spy thing. It's a dominance thing. Yeah. What's the most thing that people fear the most? The devil. I could fuck the devil.
Yeah. You just fuck it into submission. Just like a person.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Happy International Women's Day.
But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, in real life, I mean, you have to learn to adapt, right? So, for example, I've got this neighbor, and he's some kind of violent offender. So he's got an ankle bracelet, and sometimes, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, he was, chasing someone else down the street with a pickaxe, and it's like,
Jesus.
oh, there he goes again, and you just.
He's just reading a book, looking out the window, like Harold's chasing somebody with a pickaxe again.
You find a way to like live with this. It's like, oh well, he's not after me. It's like he has no reason to come after me. So just like, don't piss him off and keep the door locked, and then you just go back to writing your little books.
Yeah. Mind your fucking business.
Yep. Sips tea.
Going back to the prior thing that we were discussing, actually, what I was kind of visualizing when I joked about that was your description of your sister grabbing the knife, trying to attack your stepfather, and then you basically saying that he like choke slammed her, kind of thing. There was like a joking reference there of, I'm going to say this. There are a lot of people who do things that they're afraid of as an attempt to sort of take control of the situation.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
People who go skydiving, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Confront your fears.
Yeah. So maybe some of that. You're going to say something?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm into that. I tend to avoid my fears. Yeah, I'm just not into them.
I didn't mean in real life. I was referring to the dream.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah, you might be onto something there.
Was there a time in your adult life when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or bliss?
Less so.
Understandable. Can relate.
Right? No, at this point, I feel like I'm like constantly trying to seek some source of joy, and it's like the best I can do is like feeling okay for a while before the horrors persist.
Yeah, right. Can relate.
As you get older, it's like you can't really get like a full good day, so you just have to appreciate those good moments here and there. 15 minutes, 30 minutes.
Right? Like nothing is currently persecuting me, therefore I should feel fine. You rationally tell yourself. And then
today I woke up not on fire. So there's that.
So did I.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment to feel good about that.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, that's just like that's a random joke I have made since high school, but yeah, get topical a little bit. Going on in California right now.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
That brings more gravity to that random statement now.
Yes. Going to do this pair of questions again. Do you remember the last person you hurt?
I ended a friendship pretty recently, and I wasn't really an adult about it, and I think I hurt somebody.
Yeah, happens.
I just stopped answering her texts, and then, like 6 months after that, she sent me a heartfelt note wondering what she had possibly done to deserve this, and if I had any intention we could, get together and talk it through. And then I just, threw out the note and carried on with my life.
Sometimes you gotta do that.
Mm-hmm.
For your own sanity.
Right.
Yeah, there's a phrase that I learned during my 12-step stuff in therapy. Sometimes you just have to let it die. And the funny thing about that is I had heard that phrase and it didn't really completely click to me, except at that time or very shortly after. I had a roommate who had a very interesting combination of beliefs that I am so glad I was not their romantic partner, because they had one belief that if I'm in a fight with you and you don't respond, that means you didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But they were also of the mind that if I'm in a fight with you, I'm going to absolutely destroy you. And so they
can't win. Then.
Exactly.
Like you can't turn the other cheek, and you can't fight, because either way you can't win.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I realized that, and I don't remember if I exactly told this person, but whether it was my roommate or the other person that they were in a relationship with, one of them was going to have to let this relationship die because it was a no-win situation. Either I continue fighting with you to show you that I still care, or I continue letting you basically say the worst possible things about me in the worst possible situations. And like, it's a no-win situation. Like you want me to continue letting you abuse me? No, it's like,
exactly.
That's not healthy.
No, you got to cut them off. You just got to out. Yeah. You got to out.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that your situation is necessarily that bad, but it reminded me of that.
Similar in the fact that sometimes you just got to cut ties. It's the easiest way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So flipping that question around, do you remember the last person you helped?
I help people now that I can. So it has been nice that I have gotten older and have achieved, some level of influence wherever I go to work. And if you ask me, if you have any kind of influence at all, then that is your responsibility to use that to help people, as opposed to kowtowing to the people higher than you who may not appreciate that. So, yeah. So I pissed a lot of people off. Like, as a professor, I was always arguing on behalf of the students. And yeah, now that I have left academia entirely, I will argue on behalf of my employees and just like try to make people's lives easier.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to go into too many details in case someone listens.
Understand.
But in general, like, there is a way that you can fill out paperwork that makes someone's life easier as opposed to harder. Yeah. And it's your responsibility to do that.
Yeah. I can also relate. There was a lesson that I learned early in my 20s. There was a friend of mine who, it was her birthday, and I had just started a new job that week, and Friday was her birthday, and she wanted me to call off work that Friday so that I could take her to an amusement park. And I was like, you're out of your fucking mind. I just started the job this week and you're going to ask me to take off Friday? No. And she like flipped out on me and told me that I wasn't a good friend and yada, yada. That much later realized that was an abusive friendship. But that kind of woke me up to the fact that, and I had a couple other things happen before that, but this was like the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing that made me realize I can't help anybody else if I don't have a leg to stand on. And if this girl, wants me to do something to help her that's going to cause me to potentially maybe lose the job that I just got, there's this very fine line that I have to walk between, yeah, I want to help you, but I also need to continue being in a position where I can help you, because if I screw myself up, then what does that do for either of us?
Oh God. And that's a hard lesson.
Yeah.
You have to secure your own oxygen mask first.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right. And like when people are trying to do that to you, like that feels like some emotional manipulation to me. Like you always have to remember, like, turn around the situation on yourself. Like this person is asking you to risk your job to go to an amusement park. Like what kind of person would do that to you?
Oh, I'm sure she would have found a way to justify that.
A narcissist.
Yes, very much so.
Like demand the same kind of respect that they're demanding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So next two questions are going to be over your entire life, not any one particular section, and also not necessarily about horror, although you could focus on that if you want. But
Do it.
what movie would you say you have watched more times than any other?
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Hmm.
The Marilyn Monroe movie. It is hilarious. Okay. What I love about her sense of humor in that movie is that it's always based on some kind of tiny linguistic miscomprehension.
Okay. I love those.
Yeah, and it's also like when they were doing Technicolor and everything was freaking bright and spectacular and just lovely to look at. And yeah, it was one of the few VHS movies I had when I was, a teen girl in the trailer park. And so I watched it again and again and again. Although now that you mention it, when I was a kid, we only had one VHS tape, and I watched that again and again and again. So it might be in competition with A Fish Called Wanda.
That's a good movie.
Yes.
I watched that again and again and again. It was the only tape we had until one day the TV turned purple and it was over.
And then you still watch it a few times just in purple.
Yeah.
Take me back.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about the color grading when tube TVs start to go bad. It's purple, sometimes green. But yeah, when it turns like an all one color, it's like, okay, we got like days left.
Yeah.
It's done.
Well, in that case, it was the RGB as the G had gone out, so you had red and blue made purple.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, light, the spectrum.
Imagine that. Okay, so would you say that Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is your favorite movie, or would you consider something else to be your favorite movie?
Hard to say. As far as favorites go, I mean, I tend to pick things depending on the mood, right?
Okay.
Hard to say what a favorite is. I love everything Marilyn Monroe, everything Charlie Chaplin did, all the horror movies. I have so many favorites. I can't just pick one. I'm sorry.
Let's do it this way. If I asked you what your favorite movie is and you try to think about it, what's the first movie that comes to mind?
I'm already thinking about the Marilyn Monroe box set now, so I want to say The 7-Year Itch.
Okay. Why that one?
Because it is very clever and it has this neurotic man who gets into these interior monologues that I find very relatable. And yeah, if you can find anywhere on YouTube just the scene where he's trying to wrap a paddle to ship in the mail and the chaos that ensues, I would highly recommend it.
Okay. Do you see any common threads about what kinds of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical?
Awesome.
Metaphysical?
Yeah.
Occult, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like about metaphysical stuff?
I like when other worlds, what's the word I want? Infiltrate ours. Because I do wonder at this other side of reality that we just can't see that could appear at any time. So when that starts to bleed through, I'm into that.
Yeah, it is definitely an interesting concept. Like I remember when I first read in some scientific magazine about the concept of these things called WIMPs, weakly interactive massive particles. It's the theory that in a tangent universe or a parallel universe, there are particles that are so massive their gravity signature bleeds over into ours. Like that shit popped up a light bulb in my brain. And if you like folk horror or cult horror and metaphysical, may have already seen it, but I highly recommend The Empty Man.
Ooh,
I've heard you mention that before. Why does that ring a bell?
Because we interviewed the director, David Pryor.
Okay. So this would normally be the point where we talk about any common themes that keep cropping up and then talk about why those might be important to you.
Yeah, well, fucking.
All right.
That's the whole theme right there. Fucking the devil.
That's part of it. So the three themes I would sort of summarize this call would be power dynamics, intelligence, and joy.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of working from the bottom up. We talked a lot about empathy, the ripping up the kid's name tag, making him a new one, talking to kids who didn't have anybody to talk to, violence and the ideology, justification behind it. There's multiple different bad things that you've looked at or witnessed and thought about. And then certain things like, the bliss on the hallucinogens and, finding joy in all the things that you liked when you were a kid, roller coasters, guns, a mini bike. And there was a phrase that you had used about retreating from real life into the abstract, sort of, this escape from the pain, for lack of a better word. But also when I had asked if there was a time in your adult life when you had been, experienced bliss, your answer was kind of like just looking to be okay, like just trying to get away from that. Yeah. So it's like all this stuff leading back to joy, or, getting from the power dynamics back to joy through intelligence, if that makes sense.
Or just contentment, really.
If that's the closest we can get to joy, then so be it. But
when you become an adult, joy becomes contentment.
Yeah,
you know what? That's I'll settle
for that. Enough. Yeah, but if you can find joy, why not? If you can get it, go for it.
I'm enjoying this podcast.
Me too. This is fun.
Good.
Let's just stay there. This is a fun podcast.
Thank you. We try. We try. So I think the one thing that we haven't really talked about of those three is the intelligence angle.
Okay.
So I'm guessing there may be some reason why that's important to you.
Oh, yeah. That's my way out. And it was always phrased that way. It's like, okay, this sucks. You were born in a bad place, but you're smart, of course. So you're going to make your way out. So yeah, my intelligence became highly valued to me and absolutely necessary, because it's hard to carry on doing life and normal things when life gets in the way. But I would just rely on my intelligence to get through. I remember in high school fucking up in a way that to someone else would somehow reflect badly on them, but I would go out the night before, do some acid, show up at school at 9 a.m., having not slept, remember there's a math test, and still ace it. So it's I always felt like that's what's going to carry me through.
Intelligence is your security blanket.
That is. It absolutely is. But, and here's the kicker, it doesn't fucking matter. And that's where... when you said power dynamics, that I got a little triggered, because people keep telling me that there are so many power dynamics in my book, and it's something I didn't mean to write about. But yeah, it's always there. This overarching theme that it doesn't matter how smart you are, there are still power dynamics that mean that somebody has control over you and can make your life hell. So that is a struggle where I think, intelligence can't do anything for you there. And I'll tell you something, I feel like sometimes, violence is obviously one of the ways that is enacted. It doesn't matter how smart you are, somebody can always kill you because you are still stuck in one of these flesh bodies of which we are all constituted that make us vulnerable to the acts of other people.
So absolutely.
But it's also a kind of optimism, because remember, the people in power are also squishy flesh things that are not immortal. So it's kind of our capacity for violence and to have violence done to us is kind of a great equalizer among humanity.
Yeah, can be.
Yeah, the fact that we are all squishy.
You mentioned that you had been told that's your way out. Who told you that?
So when I was a kid, I was de-streamed from the regular school program, and they put me in a special class for gifted kids. And it's okay, you are going to be one of these people who is going to go on to college and succeed in life. And so that became the new normal. That was not, that didn't come from my family.
Okay.
That was, that came from the school system.
All right. I was just curious, because it could have been either. It could have been, maybe your mom said it or your dad said it, or in this case, maybe the teachers said it.
'Twas the teachers.
Yeah. I would push back a little bit on what you said about with the power dynamics. They can always, somebody can always kill you. I think it's more finding a balance point between intelligence and power dynamics is maybe, if not for you, then I know for a lot of people that's the struggle of a lot of what some people get a lot out of horror, either books or movies, because to them it's like research of, if I can prepare myself properly, then I can see the warning signs and I can make sure that I don't get put into a situation where, it's like playing a chess game. If I get trapped in the corner, then I can be murdered. But if I'm smart enough to see the pieces on the board and know how not to get trapped in the corner, then maybe I can escape, kind of thing. So
that makes so much sense too, because like as humans, it's supposed to be like, as a species, our intelligence is supposed to be how we make it out, right? Like, this is how we're going to take down a bear. It's not by brute force. We're going to trick it.
Yeah. In some
that
cases,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The normal follow-up question to that would be, why is that important to you in terms of intelligence? I think we kind of already touched on that in the fact that we're discussing the power dynamics. Well, you don't want to know. You don't.
Consider the alternative.
Yes. So then the follow-up question to that would be, why horror? Can't you explore these topics of power dynamics and intelligence in other genres, or do you? Have you?
True. I mean, yes, kind of, but I mean, when I started writing, I didn't know it was horror or any of the subgenres of horror or what is going on in the fields of literature entirely. So I didn't call what I was doing horror. I was obsessed with violence and murder. I wrote a murder book, is what I was calling it. And then the publisher said it was horror. And it's like, okay, I believe you because you're a publisher. And yeah, I do seem to fit in well there. But I mean, horror is so far reaching. Like, we've got the monsters, my kind of horror is pretty niche because it's like existential horror on the terrible things that people do to each other, which fits in, but it certainly doesn't embody all of the aspects of horror that it could. So I don't know if I chose horror. It's just that
horror chose me.
Horror chose me. Yeah, I was writing about murder. I am interested in murder and violence and the terrible thoughts of humankind. And if that means I'm writing horror, I'm great with that.
Yeah. When you were describing
territory.
Yeah. But when you were describing that, I was thinking to myself, maybe why wouldn't this fit under true crime, other than the fact that maybe it's not, based on real life. But then you referenced existentialism, and I think that maybe is the answer, because like true crime, it's more factual. They don't really get into the existential debate part of it. Whereas if that is part of, intrinsically part of where you're going with this, I could see why maybe they would have said, lean towards horror, not true crime.
I don't know. Well, we'll ask Christoph from Clash Books. He's the one who told me I'm doing horror. So.
I just write books about people killing people. Right. I don't know. Ask the guy who called it horror.
Right. I'm just doing regular murder stuff like people do to each other.
Just regular murder stuff. No clowns or corkscrews, just regular murder stuff.
Right. Cool. Well, I think we got a pretty good summary of what you're doing and what you like and why you like it.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anything that you thought of earlier in the call that you didn't get to say, something relevant that we haven't asked about?
No, I think we went pretty hard. I think this is a great way to do a podcast. This is what people are into, right? Like the deep, dark secrets and the rationalizations behind it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Some people anyway, not everybody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you don't even care if I write every day or these other craft questions we get all the time.
Well, I mean, there are people that, they want a 30-minute podcast, and that's just not us. At least not this. Chris and I have talked about maybe doing like a second podcast that's brief, shorter. But at least for this project, like you say, we like going a little bit deeper. Mm-hmm. Get to dig.
I like it.
Us too. Thank you for your time. Before we hit the closing, do you want to let everybody know again what you're currently working on? And before you do that, I'll also say we're going to get with you offline to grab a bio from you and some pictures for promotional stuff. We'll also create a bio page for you on our website where we can link to whatever it is that you want to link to. So anything that you're about to mention here, you can, you send us that information. We'll put it on our website so people can find you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Red Flags is out right now. Short stories about people who are dying. The organization is here to support you. We will be putting up that pre-order in mid-February, comes out March 15th. Bureaucratic horror about how organizations will destroy your soul.
They will.
They can, definitely, if you let them. Well, again, thank you for your time. Thank you to anybody out there listening. Please do come find us at horrormakesushappy.com. We'll have a bio page for Ms. Elsby there. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, like, subscribe, share, all that kind of fun stuff. On our website, we've also got a link to our Discord server. You can join us there. We post 3 events weekly. Thanks for checking us out.